I shoot at this deer and I miss him. It was a poke. It was a far shot, and I have shot a lot of things far away and was very confident in it. Obviously, I didn't have the platform under me that I thought I did, and we solved for that in our product.
So you missed, and what I guess it was the angle of the shot, which a lot of people don't think about, especially with a rifle. A lot of rings out there don't have a bubble built in. So why? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense that if people are going to be taking longer shots or even a couple 100 yards, that angle can make a big difference. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Redbeard Outdoors podcast. Jonathan, your host, and today we've got a special guest. We've got Jaryd Bernstein, like the Bernstein Bears. And man, I loved that book growing up. And when I saw your last name when we first started talking, I was like, okay.
Wouldn't that be nice?
But,
we probably wouldn't be talking if I was an heir to that thing. I wouldn't be starting.
Right. Now, I remember, and this is one of those like Mandela effects things, but I remember it being called the Bernstein Bears, but it's not. And so now hopefully that'll blow some people's minds. You go look up that book. It's the Bernstein Bears. So
some good lessons in there too, if you actually read them.
Oh yeah. I love that book growing up, and I think it was a series at some point. But anyway, yeah, side tangent there, guys. Today we've got Jaryd here. He's a co-founder for Ruff's Precision Manufacturing. We'll get into what that is, why I've decided to throw on this build, which was the rifle I used for my pronghorn hunt, his rings, why I'm going to be using them here and on future builds that I've got coming up for this upcoming year, from a coyote gun to ARs and everything in between. So if you're in the market for rings, or if you have rings that maybe you're not quite satisfied with, or wanting to step up your rings, why they're important, even though some people may not think it is, and we'll get into that as well. But this is definitely a podcast for you. I get to know Jaryd, the company, why they started in such a saturated market, such as rings, and why they stand out amongst the competition there. So with that being said, Jaryd, for people that don't know who you are you?
Yeah. I appreciate that. I really appreciate you hitting the saturated market. I want to get back to that because it is the truth. But yeah, so Jaryd Bernstein, no affiliation to the Bernstein Bears, unfortunately, or I might be sitting at a marble desk instead of a plywood one.
It's like me with McCormick. I don't have any relation to the McCormick spice brand. Otherwise, I definitely would not be living in this part of Utah.
Darn good garlic salt, though.
I know, right?
Used it last night. Yes. Yeah. Been in the firearms industry for, I guess we're at 15 or so years now. I currently still have a sales and marketing agency, and we represent some of the larger brands. We do a lot of their sales and inventory management, independent retailer management here in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado, kind of work in that Southwest desert rat type area. Mm-hmm. And have had that sales agency for a little over 10 years now. And then co-founded RPM with two other buddies, quite frankly, after I missed one of the biggest mule deer I've ever seen. And we were frustrated and started that company based on why I missed, which we can get into a little bit more in a minute. But yeah, so just been in the industry a long time. Have thankfully made a lot of good connections that allowed us to bring this company into market. Prior to that, I did the Marine Corps thing. I grew up on the East Coast, didn't even grow up hunting at all, and got into the hunting world kind of once I got out of the Marine Corps and just met some pretty cool folks and decided I wanted to pick up a bow much later in life than most folks do. So now I can't put it down, thankfully. But that's kind of the 10,000 foot view. Happy to dig a little further if you want it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's definitely, it's an interesting background, and it's with having missed the biggest mule deer of your life, that can be real frustrating. I mean, I just got back from Wisconsin and missed the biggest whitetail of my life. He came stomping in at 10 yards, and I was in a saddle, couldn't turn around in time without spooking him. And then he wouldn't stop when I tried to stop him 3 times. And he finally stopped with a bunch of branches in my way. And I said, screw it, I'm sending it. And of course it deflected off a branch right over his back, and he trotted off out of my life forever. So luckily I have it on video, so no one can say you're blaming the branch when it really was the branch. So yeah, I've got it on video to show it. I know.
We've all been there.
And then I immediately had Creed you know, the hold me now, like that was in my head. And as I was texting my buddy, I was like, I'm just going to cut my tether and jump out, you know, at 16 feet up in the air right now. I'm done. And he kind of talked me off that ledge, but I put that reel out, and a lot of people seem to relate to that of, you know,
Dude, we've all been there. We've
yeah,
all been there. I
yeah.
mean, like I started a company over it, and I mean, just what are we at? We're November, first week in November, right? So second week of September, I was in the Elkwoods. I had an archery tag, and it was slow. The rut was terrible. And the morning of day 8, I had a bull finally talk to me. The morning of day 8. And then he shut up late morning, and I'm still going in because I'm like, this hunt has been slow. I'm going in on this bull. I don't care. I'll hunt him till lunch if I have to.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not talking. I ended up creeping in, and then he lit off again, and we were in the same bush together, and I couldn't draw on him. It's just like the stories you get out there and it's paradise, but man, it can be frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
He was 5
For
yards
sure.
behind
Man.
me when he winded me. I was at full draw facing this way. He's walking around this side of the bush, the good side. I'm like, there's no way the good Lord's going to give me a shot on this thing at 5 yards. And he walked around, and a crow landed in the tree. He scared the bull, and he ran around the other side, and he caught my wind at 5 yards. I went and looked at his tracks where he like really pushed down and ran off. 5 yards. And I was at full draw facing the other way, standing behind him.
Jeez Louise.
I just sat
rough,
down.
Man.
I sat down and was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's rough. The saving grace out of it, I guess, is it was a clean miss. I didn't wound him, but yeah, I got pictures of him later. He's probably, and now for some people that hunt whitetail consistently, there's definitely bigger bucks out there, but he was probably 130, 140 class whitetail, 10 point. Like he was just purdy. And it just is what it is. You know, it happens. So next year he'll be bigger. As long as he survives rifle season, next year he'll be bigger. So yeah. But let's talk about that a little bit. So what led to, so you went on this mule deer hunt. Was it like a limited draw? Was this like a, you know, or did you just, it was special because it was the biggest mule deer you've seen?
So thankfully, I told you about the Marine Corps thing. I always say the best thing I ever did was get hurt. The state of Arizona has a program for disabled vets where if someone turns in a tag, say they fall and break their leg 2 months before their hunt, they can turn in the tag, and then the state of Arizona has a list of veterans that have been approved through the VA. All the doctors have signed off on. My particular injury is spine related, so as long as you have a mobility related injury, those tags can then be passed to the disabled vet. So it was a disabled vet tag that I was on, so I did not draw it on my points. However, I did stumble upon, I was chasing another, like a 160 class 4x4. Beautiful mule deer, perfect representation of species. Nothing to necessarily write home about, but for a guy that had just started hunting at the time, this is years ago, I was like, this is an awesome deer. Like I would love to take this deer. I was in love with him. He was nice and heavy, dark horned. I was like, this is rad. I'm chasing him around, and I bumped him. And when I bumped him, he bumped one of the biggest deer I've ever seen out of the woods that he ran through. And I've actually had a similar situation. Actually, both of these situations happened on the Kaibab, and I had a similar situation up there happen on an archery tag.
There's some big deer up there.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to kill some of them, but same thing. So I bumped this deer rifle hunting, miss him. And then a couple years later on an archery tag, I had another 150, 160 buck bump, a buck that ended up going 218 out of the aspens. So anyway, I shoot at this deer and I miss him. And it was a poke. It was a far shot. And I have shot a lot of things far away and was very confident in it. And obviously I didn't have the platform under me that I thought I did. And we solved for that in our product. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you missed, and what, I guess it was the angle of the shot, which a lot of people don't think about, especially with a rifle. You definitely think about it more with archery. You're always checking the bubble with archery, but a lot of rings out there don't have a bubble built in. You know, so why? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense that if people are going to be taking longer shots or even a couple 100 yards, that angle can make a big difference up in the mountains up here. Maybe not if you're shooting flat or a slight incline or decline, but up here in, you know, out west, there's definitely a lot of steep shots, cross canyon, things like that. Even if you're not a long range hunter that I would consider over 500 yards or so, even at that 200 to 300 yard mark, if you're steep downhill, that can make a big difference. So the cant of the rifle. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, the importance of the bubble, the importance of the cant of your rifle, especially when you're hunting, you're trying to make that perfect shot, the best shot possible to get the animal down and die ethically.
Yeah. So when I missed, you know, I'd done all the hunt prep. I had really good dope, and I'm a guy that has my dope card on the lock screen of my phone. I have it taped to my gun. When we're getting ready and we think we're going to shoot, I'm giving a buddy a Kestrel. Like, we are triple
Sorry,
covered.
real quick, explain what dope is for people that don't know what that is.
Yeah, so dope is your data on previous engagement. That's just your holdovers, right? So it'll tell you, and there's ballistics solvers, there's computer programs that do this for us now. We used to go out and do it on a 3x5 card, right? We go out and shoot, and okay, I'm at 500 and I needed to hold 4.2 minutes of angle to make that 500 yard shot, right? So we write that 4.2 down, and we know if that deer steps out at 500, I need to be at 4.2 on my turret, or on the reticle. But
so just a visual for people out there, and I'm going to get into detail here because this is stuff that I've learned as I've gotten into rifle, and I some people may know what it means, and other people may pretend like they know what it means because they don't want to sound stupid asking the question. So I'm asking it here for those guys because I was there at one point as well. So, but he says on the turret here, so minutes of angle, so MOA for most hunters is MOA, right? A lot of people that are in the competition world or military use mils, which is a little bit different, and it's some people prefer one versus the other. But most hunters are in MOA, minute of angle, and most still can't explain what that means anyway. So, but with
you and
that
I are going to get along. We should do an industry theory and myth podcast and just make fun of all the stuff that every guy with a tattoo thinks he knows. Because I love that.
Exactly.
I am,
you know, and I think we talked about this, but as I've been getting back into the firearms and especially firearms industry, talking with some of the companies, like I've just told them, look, I'm not the guy that's going to pretend like I know everything. I actually kind of like the approach of sharing it with people as I grow, helping them learn. And again, for the guy that, because we've all been there as guys, we don't want to sound stupid. It starts from grade school. You know, you don't want to raise your hand because you think everyone else knows, when in reality, the majority of the class probably doesn't know. And they're all pretending, just like you are, to know something. So, but with that being said, so that, you know, when he's saying his turret, you know, it's this right here is for your elevation. And, you know, this one is a custom from Leupold. I love that they do that, especially for hunting. You can go, you figure out what round you've got, you plug in some things on their website. And I think their scopes come with one or maybe even two. If you want to shoot 2 different rounds, you just pop this thing off, and as long as you're zeroed at 100 or 200, whatever your zero is, you can pop another one on if you're shooting a different round. And it's going to get you within, as long as you're not screwing things up, I would say it's pretty dead accurate from my experience. But anyway, so when he says dialing, so he's talking about getting, you know, your measurements here and putting it in. So when he says 4.2, he's saying dial to 4.2 or whatever, right? And then that's where he's shooting at 500 yards. So just for people, if you're not watching this on YouTube, go watch it on YouTube so you can see what I'm talking about.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So we're very ethical focused. We're very technical, a group of hunters. And so we had our data. We had confirmed our rifles. We knew, and I knew where I was. We'd do a lot of shooting to the point of helping teach precision rifle classes and all this stuff. Right. And for whatever reason, I do find it kind of hilarious. All those teaching we did, we never brought up bubbles. I don't know why we didn't. I've never gone back to my buddies that actually are the primary instructors and said, why didn't we do this? But anyway, so I missed this deer. Just clean miss him in front of him. He was facing left, and I missed in front of him off his chest by, I mean, a solid 10 inches, right? Like far. And which puts me 15 inches off of where I was aiming.
And how far did you say the shot was?
That shot was 6-ish, something like that.
So in there, you're factoring in a lot of stuff. I mean, there's wind. Even if the wind seems negligible across the canyon or wherever you're shooting at 600 yards, it could be different. You know, and then of course the cant definitely matters as well for this very reason. But yeah, so you're about off 15 inches or so.
Big, huge.
That's huge.
Miss, right? Like, and thankfully it was clean. Thankfully I didn't miss the other way and gut shoot him, right? Like, I mean, that was a humbling shot for sure. And a lot of guys, I've told this story on podcasts, and guys get on there and you shouldn't have taken the shot. And it's like, listen, man, like I killed a deer 3 weeks before at 801. We do a lot of shooting. But I did not get a good position when I took this shot. And that position, like just like you mentioned already, when I draw my bow, I'm bubble. well, if I was in that mindset of that same shot process with my rifle, I wouldn't have missed that deer, or at least I would have had a whole lot better chance. And the way that we replicated the miss, because we're like, okay, did this rifle get dropped? Did we mess this up? And we went back to camp. We stopped hunting for the day, went back and confirmed that rifle at a bunch of distances, all the way to a G. And when I'm smacking 2-liter bottles of soda or barely missing a 2-liter bottle of soda at 1,000, there's zero reason I shouldn't have hit a deer at 600, right? The way that we replicated it, one of the guys in camp goes, dude, just lay that gun over on the bipod a little bit and let's see if you're way off again. Sure enough, that's how we replicated the miss. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty simple. I look at a bubble in my bow. Why am I not looking at a bubble in my rifle? This isn't hard, right? So I went and bought the bubbles that clamp on the tube, right? It clamps around the tube, and typically there's 2 fasteners on the top, and it excuse me, cell phones. Podcast 101, right? You can tell I don't do this very often.
Oh,
so
good.
Clamps on the tube, and as I'm tightening down that bubble,
so this tube right here,
exactly. Yep. And there's a couple companies that make them, and they're reputable companies. The problem is, in order to properly install that particular design of bubble, is very, very difficult to do accurately, because as you torque those 2 fasteners, you're negatively influencing that bubble all the way down. And so I'm like, okay. And it took me, no lie, I think I was almost an hour to where I was like, this bubble is properly installed. So I'm like, okay, at least now I know I can go hunt and I have a bubble and it's fine. And as I got to hunting with it and got to thinking about it, I was just thinking about the install, and I was not in love. And it's just, I've always been one of those guys. It's like, maybe there's a better way, kind of defiantly in everything in life. Like, maybe there's a better way, which has gotten me in a lot of trouble with my mom over the years. And so I got to thinking and got to drawing, and truthfully, I had 1 or 2 Red Bull vodkas, and all of a sudden I said, why don't we just put the bubble in the bottom of the ring and make it to where the install issues get taken out? And that's what we did. So we set the bubble in the bottom half of the scope ring, so that when you set the bottom of the ring on the receiver, which if the rifle manufacturer did their job right, and then we were to do our job right and cut both perfectly square, that would make that bubble collinear to the entire system. And we take out the ability to negatively influence the bubble. So when I got to thinking about it, we're like, okay, well, when I did my research, I realized that there's companies that have already done this, and they put it at 6 o'clock. Okay. So they machined it, and the bubble was right here. And the issue was, I bought their product full retail, reluctantly, but I did. And I couldn't see the bubble from the shooting position with my non-dominant eye. I didn't want to come off the gun. As a guy out west, you know how it is. Coos deer, mule deer like to stand there, and for some reason those things do like to die. But those coos deer, they disappear on us, right? And so I'm like, man, I don't want to come off the gun to see the bubble just for me to then have to get back on the gun, and possibly I'm bumping the gun getting on and off of it, right? So we offset it. And we made it to where you can see the bubble without coming off the rifle. So you just pop open your, if you're a right-handed shooter, you pop open your left eye, you verify the bubble real quick, right? And that's the end of it. And as long as you're within the lines, you're going to be pretty darn close. So our bubble is engineered and manufactured for us. And as long as the bubble is within the lines, you're within 1 degree of perfect. And where that comes into play is during development, I contacted an optometrist and I said, hey, where does the human eye start to say there's a problem in my equation relating to the angle of the image I'm looking at? And he told me that in school, they're taught that 3 degrees is kind of where the average human is going to go. Something is wrong with my equation. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. And that's where our brains, according to someone much smarter than me, start sounding alarms, right? And so we went out and did a whole bunch of testing at 3 degrees and found out that, like, just simple math, at 500 yards with a pretty standard 308 rifle and load, a 3 degree miss can be 10 plus inches. Wow. And there's a lot of factors there. People like to get, what's your wind and what's your, right? I got it. I understand. This isn't a perfect, there's a lot of factors. We get it. But our bubble is engineered, the spacing and the size of the bubble is engineered so that, like, if it was touching the right line, you're 1 degree off. If it was touching the left line, you're 1 degree off. In the middle, you're perfect. If it goes outside, so pinned either way, you're 3 plus, right? Because 3 was the number he told me, like, 3 is going to have a big impact on your eye. Perfect. So anything outside of 3, we're just trying to negate and get people to where God forbid you lay down on the deer of a lifetime like I did, in rocks like I did, shooting across the canyon, which you already hit on like I did, and you miss this deer because of something so simple that we all do on our bows anyway, and just like open that eye, verify and close, and just, what do I need to just, okay, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't, when we drew it on a napkin, we were kind of like, why aren't we doing this? Let's go do this, you know? And that's when I approached a buddy and who had some manufacturing background and some business background. And we put our heads together and went out and found one more partner who's just an incredible engineer. And now we make every single part of that product in-house right here in Arizona, except for the bubble vial itself, because we haven't figured out how to make those, although I bet you it's coming. And we don't make the 4 cap screws. Buying hardware is just buying hardware. But we make the nut, we make the crossbolt, we make everything else here, all on our machines, all the metal prep, all the packaging, inspection, QC, shipping. We manage the entire process ourselves, which we're proud of. And that's not the easy way, but we're proud of it.
No, that's awesome. That's a great way to keep, quality control taken care of there. And then, the other thing too, you've got multiple different sizes of rings. You've got the 50 millimeter tube, the 30 millimeter tube, 34 millimeter. And then is there another size?
There is, yes. Yeah. So we do 35 millimeter as well. And primarily that's the Leupold Mark V HD series, which is a phenomenal piece of glass. That's what we see 35s typically going. There's a lot of folks doing 30, 34, but primarily Leupold 35 stuff.
Is there anything smaller than that, or most of the ones smaller than that are just, I don't want to say junk glass, but it's a more economical option?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, we made 1-inch rings during prototyping for testing. But when I did the market dive on it, the 1-inch crowd typically isn't shooting. There's 2 reasons. Typically, they're not shooting far enough to care.
Mm-hmm.
We find that this becomes a massive issue. We say 300 yards. If you lay it over like 12 degrees, it's a giant problem at 200 yards, right? But most folks, when they lay a gun over 12 degrees, go, something's wrong, and they fix it automatically, at least closer. So 300 yards is really where the bubble becomes a massive player for you. From the shot standpoint, we need to talk about the scope mounting standpoint here in a second. But from the shot standpoint, 300 yards is kind of the number, which you hit on earlier, and you're exactly right. So the 1-inch crowd, not quite typically shooting that far. And then the other thing is budget. And to make an American-made ring to the tolerance that we make it with the features that are involved, we simply couldn't hit a price point that the folks buying a 1-inch scope would typically find to be appropriate for their.
Your rings are almost as much as their scope is worth.
Or more, right? I mean, and our rings aren't, when you look at a precision rifle ring, there's sets out there that are $250, $300. We're $175 on the shelf everywhere. Our website, Optics Planet, whoever. Which for an American-made product, quite frankly, we hear quite often that we're underpriced for the feature set. So it's just kind of one of those, it has to make sense for the person. You're not going to put Ferrari tires on your Civic, and they don't belong on there, and that's fine. It's not a negative toward anybody, But there is a scope mounting aspect to this thing as well, and that's where even a lot of the folks out east that will call and say, "Hey, I sit in a stand," or Texas, right? Like, I sit in a stand. I'm going to shoot 80 yards to the feeder, dude. I don't care about the shot, but I bought your product because when I'm mounting my scope, it gives me another reference as to what my rifle is doing on my bench, and that has been super helpful for some folks as well. And we get a lot of calls from gunsmiths that say the same thing, So quite frankly, we didn't design it for that. We knew it would help. We weren't like caught off guard by it, but it's a neat thing that may apply to some other folks that are like, "Hey, I'm not shooting deer at 300. I don't care." So it might just be something else to think about.
No, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I'll just, with my rifle here, and this is the first set that I've gotten from you guys. It was pretty simple. I do want to touch base on, a lot of people will see torque screws here instead of this nut that you've got there. We'll go into that a little bit, but it fit really well. I mean, they're very clean, and torquing them down the way you're supposed to, the cross pattern, making sure everything goes down at the same time is definitely important. But yeah, let's get into a little bit there. Let's start with, I guess, first, why did you choose to do this nut here instead of the traditional torques, like what the screws are?
Mm-hmm.
People that can see here on YouTube. There's a lot of them, they'll tell you to go to, I don't know, 40 foot-pounds of, or somewhere between 30 and 40 foot-pounds of torque on your, the bottom portion of the rings that mounts to the actual rail. So why did you choose to go with the nut? And then what's the best way to do that other than hand tightening?
Yeah. So, not to jump you, but you're going to want inch pounds. You put foot pounds on that thing, you're going to crank that sucker right off.
Sorry, inch pounds. Yep. So, there you go. Yes.
And
inch
we've
pounds.
had that. I've only had one person do it, and conveniently it was one of my sales reps. We have 44 sales reps nationwide, and one of them is the only one that has put a foot-pound torque wrench on one of my products, and that goes very south. Just for the record, it's it is a mess. But
inch pounds.
So we went with the nut for the primary reason is surface contact during the torquing process. So meaning it's not that I'm as worried about surface contact on the clamp to the base. Excuse me. The surface contact of a socket on the nut while you're torquing provides a more reliable torque. And so like if we were to say do a little bit larger clamp and put 2 T25s in here, I'm torquing that clamp down. It's almost like you have to go a couple pounds at a time. That's one thing. 2, when people torque horizontally, they tend not to be square. So they'll go on, but they're like down, when you're running a drill in a wall, same thing. They'll do this. And then they'll either slip off the T25 and mar the product, which happens all the time, or they'll strip it and break the head of the T25, which we use T25s because they're strong. If you go to a T10, T20, you have this small fastener and it's a pain. But quite frankly, it was mainly for consistent, maximized surface area to get a really good torque on that base the first time, instead of having to go in a multi-step pattern on the base. You can get away with it on the cap. Most folks will push straight down better, and they'll torque a little bit cleaner and more consistent pushing straight down than they do horizontally. And so it was just trying to negate. A lot of our company was founded around, ease of install and accuracy of install. And so we just try to take as many of those things out and negate the ability to slip off and scratch and have to do some complicated pattern on 4 different fasteners.
So you obviously recommend more than hand pressure, right? So you recommend people get a socket to put on this that will measure inch pounds.
Yep. Yeah. So, and then on the back of our packaging, it actually gives you the torque specs of the cap screws. And then it also calls out the cross bolt at 45 inch pounds as well.
Okay. Awesome.
So we put it on the box to try to help. Some folks are like, why don't you laser it on the ring? And I just think it looks ugly, quite frankly. I don't want it on there.
It'll be as clean as possible.
But yeah, it's very important to, and those are minimums. Like calling a spade. We call out in 18 inches on the cap screws. That's minimum. You can certainly go, there's no reason you can't go 22 if you feel more comfortable, at 22. The other thing you're going to find is we can make the most accurate ring in the world, but we're not the only ones involved in the equation, right? The scope tube still has to be right. The receiver still has to be right. And so for an undersized scope tube, sometimes going to 22 or even 24 is helpful, depending on how thick their anodize is and all the other factors in play. We're unfortunately not the only one involved in you making a good shot,
Right.
So.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So we've got that, when you're mounting it, I mean, I use, I'm trying to remember the name of the vise, but I put that down and then I put a level on here and I put a level on the flattest part of the scope on the top cap there. And then when I said here, for people that are listening, the rail itself, and I use that to get the scope level. And then, I've got the rings already mounted, the bottom rings already mounted, or the bottom portion of the rings. And then I put the top on, and you do the cross pattern. So you do one, and then you go across. It's kind of like what you do with a tire, essentially. What you should do with a tire, for those that don't know how to change tires, go talk to your dad. He should have taught you. But in reality, it's a cross motion because you want to put as much even pressure across the scope and into the rings as possible. And they do fit real nicely in each other. I mean, they for people again that are on YouTube watching, I really like that you guys have added this little nub here. That seems to fit really well together. It just all fits really well. It's clean. It's got good surface area contact with the scope. And again, it just, I don't know, it looks great. And so far it's functioned really well. So
Good.
yeah.
Let me hit on that
So,
alignment lug
yeah.
real quick, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So that notch that you just referenced, that is not just a design. It's not a, sex appeal thing. It's a functional feature. And the reason we did it is just another visual reference. So just like the bubble on our bow, now the bubble on our rifle, right? The goal is to first, it's just to sound a quick alarm. Hey, there's something wrong in the equation. Fix it real quick. When you're mounting your scope, all we put that notch there for is for alignment, to try to help sound that alarm before you cross thread that first cap screw. That cap screw is steel, and it's going into aluminum, and the screw is going to win every time if they're not perfectly aligned. And then you're going to ruin a $200 mount over a 10-cent screw. So that alignment lug is just there to try to help during the install process, to make sure that you have the visual to allow for not only a consistent gap on both sides, but on that first screw to make sure that we're sitting perfectly on top of the scope prior to any pressure being put on those threads. It's just trying to, again, we think of everything from like how do we make this not only super effective but easy on folks, and that can be real helpful. And Gunsmiths report back saying that they appreciate it. It just helps them, especially because they can get a little complacent with stuff, and they're like, it's a great reminder. We love it. So
yeah, no, for sure. I would agree with that. And again, it all came together real simple and smooth. And again, I'm excited to get this out more in the field, because I haven't really had a set of rings that had a bubble on it. And I shot my bear at, trying to remember, it was sub 300 yards. So, but it was a stupid downhill. I mean, I was almost standing over top of the bear across canyon, like how steep downhill that was. I was probably not level. I'll just be honest with you. I was probably not level. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was more worried about not losing the bear, and I was more worried about, being able to get that down angle properly and over the grass in front of me. But, that bubble right there on the side, and as people, again, on YouTube, you can see here. So if I can get it in the camera here, if you're down on the rifle, let's see if it'll focus. There we go. And your eye is obviously focused here on the scope. You open your off eye, which for me, I'm right-handed, right eye dominant. Open my left eye, and you can see that bubble real easy there. There's a lot of different options out there on the market. But this one, again, just how low profile it is, it doesn't stick out hardly at all from the rings themselves. And again, if you're out in the mountains, you don't want things sticking out real far because they get snagged on stuff and whatnot. I know there's some pretty pricey ones out there. I know, and I work with MDT, and they've got a nice electronic one I'd say for competition. I don't think I'd ever put that on my hunting rifle. That one's pretty cool, but it's a bright LED light. Outside of that, again, for hunting especially, this is fantastic. Just low profile. I actually think, now looking at it right now, it sticks out less than the actual dial on the side. So here's the ring, and then here's the dial
by
on
design,
the side there,
right?
Yeah.
I put a lot of people behind the gun and took a lot of measurements during development to try to figure out where that bubble placement needed to be. Because if you're going to carry that thing in a sling, or it's up against your pack, the last thing I wanted was, hey, your scope rings ripped a hole in my $650 Stone Glacier pack, right? Like, there's all these other considerations besides just like the shot process. But you're 100% right. That MDT unit is awesome. And I will tell you, that thing measures by definition to a finer degree, because that thing is more sensitive than our vial. Folks, we get some guys that call and they're like, it's off 0.6 of 1 degree. And I'm like, okay, man, but it's also raining. You just ran up a hill. Like, this is not a PRS company by definition. We are Western hunters, right? Now, we have put the bubble in a cantilever for the AR, and the law enforcement world's going crazy for it because it helps. And it helps in the shot process when unfortunately, a law enforcement officer is getting ready to do something that's going to change everybody's lives. It's a nice little check and balance. Like, hey, one last thing. Is my bubble good? Am I good? And those guys too, right? Under stress, throw their gun up on a mirror, throw it up on a fence, throw it up on a roof. Everything is going bad for those folks, right? It's just a quick, like, sound an alarm if something's massively wrong. Otherwise, we're going to be good. So it's that MDT unit's awesome. I own it. I love it. It's on my competition gun. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. I just personally don't think it's a good field. Yeah, it's not really good for hunting for sure. Yeah, that thing is definitely is pretty sweet. Yeah, I guess, I mean, with the rings, is there anything else we haven't touched on that you want to hit on there?
I'll just hit on our line of accessories real quick. So we also make a cap replacement diving board. We make 2 heights. There's a high and a low.
Explain this to me, because and this is a question I want to ask you about, because, you know, one of the rifles I'll be building 6.5 PRC for NRL Hunter, and because I just refuse to shoot the 6.5 Creedmoor. Nothing about it, but, you know, it's just, you know, 6.5 PRC bucks the win so much better. It's just so much nicer.
I'm a PRC believer. I think it was God's gift to us all. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I won't, even my kids, I'll do a 6 Creedmoor over 6.5 Creedmoor, because just for the principle of it, you know.
I'm with you. I've killed buffalo with 6.5 PRC. We've killed.
Yeah.
I loaned my 6.5 PRC out to kids with terminal illness to go hunt. I bet you that thing's got 35 elk on it. I mean, it's a cool round. There's no way around.
And that's what this gun is. That's what I got my my pronghorn with, and then I've got a 6 Creedmoor that we just built for my son's first hunting rifle, because he won't shoot past 300 yards, and that little 95 grain bullet is zipping at 300 yards. That thing will knock down. Yeah, I was punching holes in paper at distance. It was pretty nice. But anyway, so with the competition gun, you know, I've seen a lot of people put those rings that you had up the top cap. What is that for? Other than, I've seen, you know, I looked up ChatGPT and all this stuff, and it actually, guys, ChatGPT is pretty awesome if you're looking to do a rifle build. It actually, like, will go and source all the information from these different companies, get you weights, get you, like, what's the best twist rate for this round. And, like, it's pretty interesting. But anyway, they told me that was mainly for NRL. People will put a red dot on there for the shots that are sub 100 yards, essentially. And you can't really get a scope on it, because a lot of people are running high power scopes, and their lowest is either 5 or 6, and that's too much for a 50, 75 yard shot. So is there any other reason, or is that the main reason?
So there's quite a few reasons. That is one of them. There's no way around it. You can use it for a secondary aiming device, right? So what this is this is a cap replacement for the front ring. So it would replace the cap on your front ring. Conveniently, we made these universal to where it works on our ring sets, like what you're holding. It's also the same exact cap replacement on our cantilevers. So it's for the retailers, that's nice, because they have one product that fits everything. So if it's a AR guy, a bolt gun guy, they have a solution. But so what you can do is mount a red dot to this and do exactly what you said. So let's say your primary optic is 0 at 100 and you're focused on a 700 yard target. Think of it from a predator hunting standpoint. You're looking at a coyote that's coming in, and then we all get that crazy cousin coyote that jumps out and wants to bite the call at 7 yards, right? That red dot could be zeroed somewhere closer to allow for effectively a secondary aiming position, right? So that's one way. That red dot on top can be used for the shot. It also has an extremely applicable and valid use for target ID when, like you mentioned, your son. When your son gets behind a gun, and let's say it's a 3 to 15, and you have it on 10 power, and he's getting ready to shoot a deer at 300. We've all done this with kids where they get behind him, and I can't see it. I can't find the deer. I can't find the deer. If they pop up and look over their turret, they can put that red dot on the deer, and then as soon as they take their eye down 1 inch, they're on the deer. Your primary optic is now on the deer. So it speeds up the shot process significantly. Law enforcement is starting to put it into a curriculum where they're using it, like, for instance, in a public venue. You know, over the radio comes, hey, the guy with the red hat, we need to look at the guy with the red hat. Well, now the observation team is looking for this dude in a, you know, he's standing next to the hot dog cart. He's got a red hat on. Well, I can't find him. If you look at 0 power, red dot, put it on the guy with the red hat. Take your eye down barely into the primary optic. We're looking at him, and then those guys can go to work. So there's a target ID portion of it. There's a target engagement portion of it. And then the last thing is the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder crowd. It gives us a place to mount that rangefinder at 12 o'clock, which is where most of those rangefinder manufacturers prefer, and where the displays look the best, and keeping it, you know, center line of the rifle versus hanging off the side, becoming bulky and always running into stuff. So that's and then the fourth reason that a lot of guys will put them on, and you'll see a lot of guys run them, and there's no optic, there's no dot, no rangefinder mounted to them, is a lot of folks like to use it as just a handhold. So when they're resting on a barricade or something, instead of pushing on because in theory, if you put your hand on the bell of the scope, you could flex that scope tube. In theory, you'd have to really push on it. But just having it just as somewhere to put their hands so they're not influencing their shot. Same concept as like not putting your barrel on the barricade, but putting your chassis on the barricade.
Mm-hmm.
You could bend that very important portion of your shot scenario. So those are the 4 kind of main uses that I would give you. But the red dot one is becoming the popular for those 2 reasons: engagement and speeding up being on target.
That's cool. No, I like that. Yeah, and I was seeing that around, and I was just wondering, what that was, and that definitely makes sense. Those are all good, really good reasons. Let's see here. You recommend for hunting and most bolt guns, do you recommend this 2-piece ring system? Or
we do. Yeah,
what's the cantilever
do.
mainly for?
Yeah, so cantilevers were designed for gas guns because if you look at an AR-15 receiver, a lot of times to get the proper eye relief, especially on something magnified more than, say, an LVPO at 1:6 or 1:8, typically it requires the scope to be further forward. And the issue is what you end up with your front ring out on the handguard and your rear ring on the receiver. And no matter how good the AR manufacturer is, those 2 are never on the same plane. So you'd have this exaggerated scenario. So what a cantilever does is it mounts the main mounting points, both the cross bolts end up on the receiver, but it pushes the scope forward to get our eye relief proper for the back end. I will not in the next little bit, but pretty soon, put out a non-cantilever 1-piece mount for the bolt gun crowd that wants that, and it's very valid. It's by definition, it is an easier, more accurate mounting solution to cut it out of 1 piece of billet and have the scope sit in it versus dealing with two separate pieces. But from a hunting standpoint, this is always going to be lighter. There's no way around it. And as some of these, bolt guns, we're getting these integrated rails, right? Where there's only like 1 or 2 little pieces of pick section. And you're never going to get this to be proper unless it's like the 5% perfect scenario. Whereas these give us the ability to move and do what we have to do. So from a hunting standpoint, I don't ever see a split ring system getting replaced. With that being said, at modern firearms, there's all sorts of different things happening. And so us just having options for folks is incredibly important.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's talk scope or ring height. That's something that, a lot of people, and I even talked to you about this a little bit because I was a little confused on it. It can, some of it can come into play where, you can see even here for people again watching, you can see the bottom of the objective lens on my scope is actually just a little bit lower than this cutout on the MDT chassis here. You don't notice it downrange, and I actually kind of like, and it might be the traditional, just normally what I do situation with scopes is keeping it as low as possible. But what's the difference between this, which I think was not the lowest option possible because of the objective lens being a 52 millimeter objective lens? I guess what do you recommend? What do you see as far as trends going with the hunting market, and then even matches, PRS and NRL hunter? What should people be looking for when they order rings from you guys?
Yeah. So the biggest thing to remember in this conversation, and I appreciate you bringing it up, is that there's anatomy involved in this decision. Just because I tell you that your 44 mil objective scope will sit closer to the barrel and be good with our low ring does not mean that that's the only option for you or that that's the right call, because your shooting position is important. Your cheek weld, like we talked about, I have a spine injury. My neck is a mess. I can use a low on nearly every bolt gun that isn't a continuous chassis, right? So like yours doesn't have a continuous top rail across top. If it's a 50 mil objective or less, our low will fit 99% of the time. Okay. That does not mean that you're going to be comfortable though. And I'm with you. I always tried to get my scope as low to the bore as I could, because what we're trying to do is maximize the travel of the erector inside, right? Give us the most ability to shoot as far as we can Well, modern scopes have given us more travel internally, and it allows us to now give ourselves a little bit more comfortable shooting position, which is why a lot of the chassis and stocks now have adjustable cheek pieces on them, because we can tune it for the individual that has a spine injury or has a bigger face or a beard or whatever the scenario is. And so we find, like my sales data will tell you, medium sells most for us. It's followed very closely by low. Don't get me wrong. We sell a ton of lows. Most folks still subscribe to the just get it as close to the barrel as I can. And that makes sense. You're getting the most out of your system that way. Nothing wrong with that. But a lot of guys will put a medium on and find that the shooting position is more comfortable for them. It's just it's an anatomy thing.
And just a visual representation here, guys, with this rifle here, when he's saying your cheek weld, do you have to duck in like super hard, or you turning, or do you prefer a more upright, and then that's when you can, this one's adjustable where it'll go up and down. And then, do you want your scope higher up or down based on that? But, this was definitely comfortable for me. I think we did the medium rings on this one because it is a 52 millimeter scope. And I didn't feel like I needed to go up higher. And I also kind of I wanted my kids to be able to shoot this gun as well. It's not this is a very nice custom rifle, but it's not as built specifically just for me as maybe a NRL or a PRS gun will be in the future, where I'm the only one shooting it essentially for the foreseeable future.
Yep. And then what we see in the PRS game and certain areas of hunters that take specific shots will fall under this too. But like most folks in the old days or our thinking is we kind of build these guns to shoot prone. Well, you and I hunting out west, I don't know how many animals you've shot prone, but mine's like pretty darn minimal, right? It's always sitting off a pack, off of shooting sticks, off a tripod, right? So it's a more upright position typically for our actual real world shot. The problem is we all go to the range and we zero prone. And so we build these guns to be comfortable prone, whereas now you'll see a lot of the PRS guys, you'll see these scopes up higher because when they're behind a barricade or they're leaning on something, they want to be more upright. Their chests are more upright. They're not laying down. And so modern scopes, thankfully, have compensated for that. So now we can get away with mounting a scope a little higher because we still have enough travel to be effective within the capability of that particular round, which is whole nother. You and I could do this for 3 hours on just that statement alone. And so there's not a wrong answer, but to give you a generic, if it's a regular style bolt action rifle, 50 mil objective or less, lower medium. It's anatomy based. Now, what we do as a scope ring company, if you buy my lows and you're like, hey, dude, I just got this little kink in my neck when I'm behind the gun. We swap them for mediums, no charge. You send them back to me. I inspect them. We send you a new set. No questions asked, no money exchanged. Like, we want you to be effective. 52 mil to 56. I think I told you this when you and I were talking. That's that kind of, it's not no man's land, but it's very specific. It's very stock barrel profile, the rail thickness. There's a lot that can happen in there. Typically, that's going to be a medium. And then if we want to put anything bigger than a 50 on a gas gun in a ring, it's a high. But on a gas gun, I'm always going to suggest switching from a ring to a cantilever. This will put any magnified optic on the market onto an AR. So this is a one-stop. The cantilever is a one-stop solution for your gas gun. Plus, you got to think we've already done the math for the eye relief. This is a safer answer. But on the bolt gun side, 50 or less, low, medium, 52 to 56, medium, high, depending on the scenario.
Sweet, cool.
And we're available.
That answers.
I probably answer between 6 and 15 emails a day that are, here's my gun, here's my scope, here's my rail. What do I need? And we love doing it, And I've tried to make a graphic. People were like, just put it on the website. And it's the problem is, like, look at your MDT. You have that cutout in the front. If that was a traditional,
if this wasn't cut out, I would need a high.
Correct. You would need a high. And if you didn't have that piece out front, we honestly, looking at that, we probably maybe could try a low and just, you know what I mean? I think the shooting position would not be comfortable for you, but there's just so many, when you get above 50 mil, there's just a lot of factors and we're happy to work through it. There's not too many combinations we haven't worked with.
Right. No, for sure. Sweet. I think that answers all the questions. I can't really. Is there any other common questions that you want to touch on?
No, just, we chose to be American made. It's not the easy route, but it lets us control our tolerance, and we're proud of that. And that's why, every now and then a bad bubble will slip out of the factory. We change our QC constantly to try to catch it. And all I can ask is that, folks, if you have an issue, reach out to us. We're so easy to work with because we're just shooters. We're users. It ain't tough. It's not tough to take care of people. I tell people that all the time. Tell my guys every day. Being nice and doing the right thing is free. So just do it.
No, I agree. That's awesome. That's something that is super important. And again, being US based right now, you're not getting hit by all the tariffs, that's going on right now. I've talked to a couple of companies I work with that are, they felt like things were going well, and then the tariffs come in and they're like, well, it's not like we're manufacturing out of China, but even if you're doing Taiwan or Vietnam or anyone that would be considered an ally of the US, it's still getting hit pretty significantly. And then they have to either decide, are we going to charge the customer more, or we got to cut things elsewhere in the company so that we can absorb that amount that we're no longer profiting. It's a hard decision, so yeah. And a lot of people it's funny because people want to say all their stuff that they get is US, but then they complain about the price. The same person that's doing one is also complaining about the price of the other. And yeah, that's a whole nother tangent I could go on. There's people, you can't make everyone happy, right? And so
trust you. Hey, we're stacking up the list of fun podcasts we could do together here.
I know, right? Yeah,
I hear it all the time. Well, can I get a discount? And I'm like, well, I can't pay my guys less to make your set of rings. And quite frankly, when people look at our books, like, this is no one's business, but we should charge more. But I wanted to be, when you buy I don't know, what's a good example? There's just like those things in our lives. I'm trying to look around my desk to find one. Like I buy the same coffee every week, right? Like, it's just, that's the coffee I buy. And we want to get to the point where when you buy a scope and a gun, like, you just no brainer, like, oh, I just got to go grab a set of RPM ring, right? And the way we're going to do that is not only being very accurate and easy to work with, but they need to be affordable. And it's, I'm not trying to get a helicopter in 1 year of sales off these things. Like, we want to become a staple in the industry. And if we continue our quality and stay true to what we are, we will,
Yeah,
but
for sure. No, I'm right there with you, man. And, the glass, and here's the other thing too, is, I work with Leupold. They're amazing people. I personally think for the money, you can't really get a better scope as far as glass. There are, higher end options as well, but at that point, you're kind of getting to where you're paying more for very little bonus, right? And the people that need those features, it's awesome. They're willing to pay for that. But with Leupold, I've absolutely loved their glass. I think people should definitely pay attention to the glass, not just how much they're paying for the rifle, but also the glass is very important. It's not what it used to be, where the glass was almost the same price as the rifle just to get a good piece of glass. But you're gonna pay some good money for a good piece of glass if you're wanting to stretch it out at all. If you're wanting the other thing too with hunters, this is super important because you may go out to the range at 10 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon or midday. Your light is phenomenal. But then when you're out hunting, when do the animals come out? First light, last light. Like, they're very rarely, unless they're in the rut, they're not really out during the day a lot for many reasons. And so you want to get a good piece of glass and you should go out and test, does this do well in low light scenarios? Because you're not going to want to have your situation where, you're out there, and in this case, it was rings for you, or the bubble, but where you're like, oh man, I can see them great through my binos, through my spotter. And then you pull up your scope and you're like, there's just a lot of like fuzz out there. I can't really see anything. So definitely pay attention to that. And I say all that because if you're getting good glass, this really isn't the most. There are cheaper rings out there, and I say cheaper because yes, they're more economical, but also they're not doing the same thing and have the same features as the RPM rings. So highly recommend them. I've got them on this rifle, and we'll be doing more builds in the future, of course. And this is just something that, again, you can spend more, but this is, to me, like the Leupold of scopes. It is a great piece of equipment to add and a great upgrade to spend just a little bit more money and get so many more benefits out of these rings. So I think you guys have done a great job from what I've seen so far. I'm not a professional. I'm not a doctor, on these things.
No,
take my opinion for what it's worth, but it's definitely a step up from the rings that I've used in the past.
No, we appreciate that, man. We made them for the folks that actually use them. I think a lot of what you were talking about, and I agree with you on Loophole, absolutely love their stuff. And the people are some of the better people in the industry. There's a lot of companies in the industry where it's just like, well, I spent this on it, so it must be good. And that's a flex thing for folks. And you and I could do this for another hour, but I'm far more impressed when you can tell me that you feel really good at 700, and not only do you tell me that, but you go and smack something and it falls down right away and doesn't take 2 more steps. That's the guy we build for, and that's the guy we interface with every day, and we're thankful for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I know people that they shoot Leupold and then they go and get that more expensive scope, and they're like, it actually has less features than some of my Leupold scopes do.
Man, they do a dang good job, and one of my better friends is the Arizona Leupold rep, and he's incredibly ugly if you're listening, Jeremy, but he's a great human, just like most of the folks at that company.
Yeah. Well, he's got people focused on looking through scopes, not at him, right? So that's
thank goodness. Another jarhead, just ugly jarhead.
Right. That's awesome. He must be the green crayon guy. He's the
no, he's the whole box. That dude.
Okay.
He's the whole box. He's got
not just red, not just the red ones.
I'm a little the red ones, the red ones in the morning, they're just darn tasty, but he's just the whole box.
Keeping Crayola in business. With that, man, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you wanted to hit on?
No, I greatly appreciate you, and I will just thank you publicly. I think the way that you handle yourself, the way that you interact on social media, there's a lot of nonsense in that space, and I appreciate the way that you structure your podcast. I'm not going to propose to you after this, but I genuinely enjoy the way that you carry yourself and your brand, and I hope we can do more together in the future.
Oh, for sure. Definitely will. Like I said, we've got a couple builds and we've got a 22 Creedmoor in the works, NRL rifle in the works. And then we've got some stuff with Aero Precision as well. That those are some good people as well. They're getting into the bolt game, which I was kind of surprised to see that, because they're known for AR stuff. Anyway, yeah, there'll be a lot more coming. So guys, definitely go check out RPM. Get your rings. Right now it's kind of middle of the season, so maybe don't go and have to resight in your rifle right now. But I definitely recommend, if you're in the market for rings, or if you've got builds coming up, or when you're done filling your tag, you want to upgrade your equipment. This is a great way to not have to cut off an arm and a leg and sell them, to upgrade your equipment and just have a better shooting experience. So highly recommend. I'll leave the links down below for that, along with their social channels, so you guys can go and check out what they've got cooking. And outside of that, man, I appreciate you, Jaryd. Thanks so much for coming on. And like I always say, guys, get out, live your life, and love it.